Hey guys, excited to be here with you today, and congratulations on taking the step of watching this information so that you become better educated. I'm a top producer in the area. I'm not going to be talking about interest rates or programs or why you should buy today. What I am going to be talking about, what I'm known for in the area, is education. Today's goal is to empower you with data, statistics, numbers in a simplified way so that you can understand what's going on with the market. For all of us that have been looking or involved in the real estate market in the last couple of years, or if you've been kind of on the sidelines thinking, I want to buy, but watching it, you're like, I just don't know what to do. Rates are all over. They're changing all the time. I listen to the news and it says one thing. I listen to this report. It says another thing. And all that could be very conflicting and very confusing. And I understand that. I have compassion for that. Even being in the business, it takes a lot to go in and really dive into the stats and the data to know what to look at, to be able to provide some education. So the goal of today is to really give you an overview of what impacts the market, what do those patterns indicate, and where are we going? So as we look at these economic reports and indicators, there's many different things that we look at and that are considered when we determine what are we doing moving forward, and is home ownership a good investment strategy? The number one focus, and we keep carrying this key phrase of inflation. What is inflation? So when we look at inflation, it's just really how much does something cost versus one time versus today. Meaning if in 2017 you bought something for $100, that same thing that you purchased, if you purchased it today, would be $126.32. Well, as of December. So what that means is that things cost more. Now, the Fed's focus is always going to be driving the economy. And so when inflation is high and things are more expensive and people are using the credit card, they're maxed out on debts, they're not able to afford things, well, the Fed has to look at that and say, wait a minute, we need to make things a little bit more affordable, because if it keeps going in this direction, it's going to break the economy. So their number one focus right now at the Feds, and you keep probably hearing Fed minutes and Fed meetings and the Fed fund rate, all of that right now is the focus of how do we get inflation under control? That's what we've been focusing on. So when the Feds meet, they're looking at all these key indicators, all the data, and they're trying to figure out what should we do. When they increase the Fed fund rate or decrease the Fed fund rate, that's going to impact and drive what the economy does. So they're trying to figure out what should we do. So if inflation is high and things cost more, and you can see here, I like this little graphic because it shows you just, coffee from 1970, how much it costs to today, you could see what inflation has done over time. Things become more expensive. So we look at that as an indicator, because whenever we look at inflation, it has a direct impact on mortgage interest rates. Every single time that mortgage interest rates have been high, inflation is high. Every single time that inflation comes down, mortgage interest rates come down with it. So if the Fed's number one focus is that we have to have inflation come down, and they've already said we will do whatever it takes, what does that mean? Well, that means that that's one indicator that yes, mortgage interest rates should be coming down. How do the Feds track that? They're going to be looking at reports such as the CPI or the GDP, and really this is just looking at the size of the economy. What's going on with the economy? Is it expanding? Is it growing, or is it not? And then that is an indicator of what they need to do around inflation, Fed fund rates. Another factor that they're going to be looking at is going to be the jobs report, unemployment. Unemployment is going to show the health of the economy. So if we have a positive jobs report, meaning that people are employed and there's more than enough jobs, means the economy is doing well. When the economy is doing well, mortgage interest rates can stay elevated, because that means that the economy can support higher interest rates. So what happens when job report comes in that is negative, meaning that people are out of jobs, that there's not enough job openings for how many people need it? Well, it's the direct opposite. That means the economy is not doing well, which means that they need to lower interest rates. So it's always working on a pattern of up and down depending on the reports. So what are the Feds saying? This is a chart here that shows what the Feds think that they're going to be doing. Now, there's a lot of Fed members, and each of those Fed members will vote, and they will say, here's what we think that we're going to do with the Fed fund rate to either help or support inflation. And so as you can see here, the cuts means that they're going to cut the Fed fund rate. The Fed fund rate is just an overnight borrowing rate for banks. And so the more expensive, meaning the higher that rate, the more it costs for banks to be able to lend. It makes things less affordable. When they cut the Fed fund rate, that means it's less expensive. So it can generate more money can circulate, and it can help the economy, it makes things more affordable. So if you see here, the zero cuts at the top here, and then you see that the 25 basis points, that means that they're going to lower the Fed fund rate, which again is going to help. It's going to make things more affordable for borrowing overnight, and then more cuts. So the direction here is most people in the Fed chair is saying, yes, we think that, we're going to have cuts this year. So that's going to help support the lower Fed fund rate, is going to help support the economy. But what is a big takeaway from that means that they agree that means that inflation is starting to become more under control. Because if inflation is starting to be more under control, and we have seen it decrease, then that means that now they can be in a position that they can lower that Fed fund rate and be able to help support getting lower interest rates. So if you see here, this is what they're looking at, again, that unemployment rate. So we have, several that think that there's 9 of the Fed members think that it's going to be somewhere between a 4 and a 4.1 unemployment rate, whereas 3 think that it's going to be 3.8 to 3.9. Why is this important? Well, because this is going to decide what the Fed members do. When these reports come out, if the unemployment rate comes out better or worse, it's going to get the Fed chairs to change their minds in what they're going to be doing moving forward with the Fed fund rate and overall direction of the economy. So what does that mean as far as unemployment rate and recessions, and how does that impact the market? If we look here, you can see the direction. You're going to see the unemployment rate, right? You have here this big line, and then these gray lines here is going to be recessions. I like showing this because I think it's really important to understand what happens every time the unemployment rate has gotten to where it's, higher, meaning there's less jobs. That means we're an indicator that we're in a recession. Every time that we've been in a recession, interest rates go down. As interest rates go down, more buyers brings the housing prices up. So housing stays stable during recessions. But you can see here, every single time unemployment spiked, what happened? Recession, spiked, recession, spiked, recession. Well, why this is important is because the job unemployment rate, as we see that number go higher, meaning there's less people that are employed and less jobs, that means we're in recession. Another indicator that mortgage interest rates will be trending down. So it's another indicator that we're going to be looking at, because as you can see here, every single time that we hit the recession, mortgage rates drop. So now we're looking at mortgage rates in recession. So we have a recession, drop, recession, drop, recession, drop. So every single time we have a recession, mortgage interest rates drop. Now, again, housing stays strong through recessions. And a big part of that, you can see here now, this is housing prices. And these lines here are the recessions. So every single time you can see recession, housing prices went up. And again, because of the inverse, meaning recession, lower interest rates to make things more affordable to help the economy, housing prices go up. Because every 1% lower in mortgage interest rates, you have up to 5 million more buyers in the market. You have more buyers, you have low inventory, continues to have prices go up. So as interest rates hit over 8%, most people were saying in the news were, so many articles from the news saying, rates are over 8%, housing's going to crash. What happened? That didn't happen. Why? Because inventory. As long as you have a low supply of inventory and a lot of buyers, it keeps housing prices moving up. As you can see here, we look at kind of the state of the economy, personal savings rate versus credit cards. This is another indicator with recessions. You have a lot of people that are, had lived off debt, credit cards at a high, and then not having any savings in their checking and savings balance that they can use. But why is this different than, the crash? A lot of people are like, I think we're going to crash again. Well, why is this different? People have equity. If we look back into 2007 for the 2008 crash, you could see that people didn't have equity in their home, which was the cause of what happened. People couldn't refinance to get a lower rate. They weren't in a position to have enough equity to sell their home. They were upside down. Not the case. You can see here based on the data that the average loan to value, which means how much equity someone has in their home, is huge. So you can see here that loan to value means how much of a loan versus the value. So that means in 2008, that means they only had 19% equity in the home that was theirs. You can see here, that's not the case. It's 58% is the average of people having equity in their home, which is outstanding. We can also look at patterns with presidents, and you can look at the political, because I know there's a lot that goes around, what's going to happen with the political party right now and everything going on with the election. And we can look back and just still see the patterns of what happened when it was high inflation. So if you're looking at this, you can see inflation was high. Mortgage rates went high because, again, inflation is high, mortgage interest rates are high. Fed fund rate was high. And then the inflation response, you could see here, mortgage interest rates response here, so high. And then the S&P was down and we hit a recession. So then you can see here when inflation was low, mortgage rates were lower. I mean, still obviously higher than the lowest peak that we had, but still low. And then you can see the Fed fund rates was relatively low. And then you could see that here the inflation response went a little bit higher, so it was low, and then inflation went up. And then you could see that we had a recession, right? Then you could see here where inflation again was, range between here. So every time that you look at it, you could see inflation was a response, and it was active with interest rates and what the Feds did and the direction that we went and that we moved forward with. So it doesn't even really necessarily matter as far as the president. It's always going to follow a pattern of if we're high inflation, we're going to see high mortgage interest rates, and it's going to lead towards the consequences of having a recession and then a government response in order to change that pattern. So we see here what the Feds are saying as far as that Fed fund rate, the Fed cut. You can see that they're looking, March potentially 50%, thinks that maybe we're going to have a cut in the Fed fund rate. And then down from there, you can see beyond that all of them are saying, yes, we do agree this year. We do need to start cutting the Fed fund rate and start re-stimulating the economy in the direction that we're going. So again, as you can see here, the mortgage interest rates are going to follow the Fed fund rate in the sense that it's following inflation. So if the Fed cuts the rate, does that mean mortgage interest rates tomorrow are going to go down? No, it does follow, as you can see, not a beautiful straight pattern. And does the Fed fund rate dictate mortgage interest rates? No, they're not. They're completely separate. Fed fund rate is an overnight rate. It's not your mortgage interest rates. But based on what's going on with the economy now, looking at the reports with inflation, mortgage interest rates follow inflation. So if the Feds are cutting rates to help inflation because they agree that inflation is coming down, that means inflation is coming down, which means mortgage interest rates are coming down as well. So you could follow the different patterns here. And it's really important chart here because you can see inflation, home appreciation, what that does with mortgage interest rates, and the Fed fund rate. All of these are patterns. All of this is information that gives us a good indicator of what to expect because owning a home is an investment. And understanding the graphs, the statistics, the numbers, the directions, and the patterns is going to help you understand what that investment is going to do. So you're not making a decision based on emotion or what the media is saying. You're making a decision based on facts, data, patterns, and what people are forecasting to happen, which is what we do in everyday life. Any decision we make, we're weighing our options. What's happened in the past that's going to dictate what we think is going to happen in the future so that we can make smart decisions. So now if we look at kind of the state of the economy, right? So we're looking at right now, what are the current things? So you can see here, 29% of buyers are saying that the competing offers as first and second barrier to purchase, meaning that right now it's just really tough because we're competing, which low inventory, meaning there's not a lot of homes on the market and you have several buyers. And as interest rates come down, you're going to have even more buyers. That is going to be the case. If there's multiple buyers, that means that you don't have as much room for negotiations because the seller has more options to choose from. So it's really important understanding the market that we're in and that we're moving towards. So a lot of, buyers in the past that I've talked to have said, I'm just going to wait until rates come down. And that's definitely something to consider depending on your current situation. I'm not going to say that everybody is the same and everybody should buy today. I don't think that that's the case. And I don't think that that's a fair statement. But what you want to look at is, what does that mean? Why are you waiting for rates to come down and getting deeper into understanding what that's going to look like for you in the future? Because again, every 1% drop, you have 5 more million buyers in the market. If you have that many more buyers in the market and you have low inventory, it goes back to supply and demand. We just looked at the data that supports rates are going to drop. And when rates drop, housing prices goes up. And so if housing prices go up, even if interest rates drop, is your payment really going to be affordable? If you're getting a mortgage and you get a rate today at a lower price today, you need to compare that as to where do we think that we're going to be based on the statistics and the data, and what do those payments look like, and does that make sense? Because tight inventory becomes tighter. There's less options, there's less choices, and there's less protection for you as the buyer because you're removing a lot of contingencies. So as we can see here, home prices continue to go higher. So you're looking at all this. This is not me saying, here's where I think prices are going. This is why you should buy. This is me saying, here's what everybody is forecasting and showing where are we going with the market. Can they continue to go? Everyone's like, how can they go higher? And there's a lot of factors that you have to consider as far as affordability, people's incomes going up, low inventory. And this is where those predictions come from. But you could see here the pace of where we think that the home appreciation is going, all positives. So you could see that everybody thinks that, yes, we're going to continue to appreciate. We're going to see home prices go higher. And it's really important when you're looking at the media to understand what's the difference between appreciation and home price change, because you may hear people say, oh, the median home price. All that means is the average of the homes that are selling. What's the average of those homes? That's a median home price. That is not appreciation. Appreciation is how much the homes go up in value. So it's important to look at that, because you could see the media will say, oh, the median price changed. It went down 7%. Well, that's just because of affordability. If you had lower interest rates, 2 years ago, you had more people that were buying in the $1 million bucket than are today that needed a loan. Versus if you're looking today, it's more affordable for people that are purchasing under, $600,000. So of course, the median price of the home is going to change because of affordability, but it still remains the same, that appreciation has gone up. The amount of the home value and how much it appreciates has gone up. So be careful with the media. Here's one here that we're looking at here, and it says some buyers could start to see big drops, right? This makes us nervous. We're like, oh, we can't buy because I don't want to take I don't want to take that loss. Let's look at the numbers. So they were saying a decline of 25 to 30% because, that's what they think that it's going to be, and there's growing inventory. And is that true? Well, 6.5 of the homes had a reduction in price. 6.5% of the 100% had a reduction in price. And most likely those just weren't priced correctly. We had people that were pricing them too high for the market, wanted too much for the home than what it was worth. 93.5 sold at the list price or higher, and 32 above the asking price. So you always want to look at the data and not the story, because stories sell. That's why they put them out there, but it's not the correct information. We can look and see right now where we're at with inventory. So let's look at 2007. When we look at 2007, you can see there is 4 million listings, meaning that there's 4 million homes that were being sold. And the population was 301 million. So up here we had 4 million listings and 301 million population. Now, in 2023, we only have 1 million listings and we have 340 million population. So our population, how many people needed housing, went up, and the availability of listings went that much down. So when you look at it, you have 3 million less homes and 40 million more people. So if you look at the numbers, the math, doesn't lie. You look at the stats and the numbers, there's a huge gap. You could see here with the population versus inventory, huge miss. So when they say that inventory, is going up, and you look at the numbers and the stats, you got to take into consideration how many people need housing. Why is this important? This is such a miss that most people don't realize. The average home buyer range is around 33 years old. Average home buyer. Now you got less, you have more, but average home buyer, right? So we go back and look and say, okay, how many people 30 years ago, how many people were born that need housing? So when you look at the numbers, you can see there was an increase here. And that had a lot to do with, if anybody knows timeline, birth control and, abortions being outlawed and all that kind of stuff changed. And so had an uptick in births. So if we look here and we say, okay, well, the household growth, how much housing went up, annual completions mean how many homes have been completed, like how many new housing do we have? Because if you have more people, you need more housing, right? Well, you can see here that's it's way off. It's way off. You can't make more land to build. So depending on where you buy, and if you're in, California, Sacramento, Placer County, all of our areas, there's only so much land that can be built, and there's only so fast that you can actually build, that it's going to be a long time before we even get into a position where we have enough housing for how many people we need. So when you look at the real story and you dive in, not the media where they say, oh, we have existing homes, we have 1 million, existing homes. Well, no, 286 of those were ones that were already under contract and off market, meaning they're not available. So really you only had 714,000, which is what you need to compare. So when you look at active listings, and you could show back in 2007, right, before the crash, how many active listings there were versus now, and we have more population today. So is it going to be an issue? We're going to continue to see an inventory shortage because they can't build fast enough for how many people need housing. Now you say, Kristin, I just don't know. I don't think housing can sustain it. Well, again, let's look at the numbers. So it's all a matter of like figuring out what are the patterns and, what am I going to bet against? So if you look at this here, you can see 70, what is it? 75. Yeah, 75. So you can see since 1941, this is the price of homes changing, right? And we have in brackets, you could see the appreciation, how much it's went up in all of these areas. You can see the big amounts in these ones. These were smaller, so it's all average. But look here, there's only 6 years out of the 75 to 6 that housing appreciated, not depreciated. So everyone's going to look and say, okay, well, this bracket here of 2007, 2011, was the big housing crash and housing went down and all this stuff. But those were bad loans. Those were appraisals being done that were inflated, and that's not the case anymore. People have to document their income, make sure they can afford the home, the loan, make sure the home is worth what it is, what they're willing to buy it for. So there's no more of those things that come into play, which is supporting and protecting the quality of the loans and the values of the properties because people can afford the homes. So low home inventory, you can see here, leads to a surge. And you can see here the inverse of we have just too many people that need housing and there's not enough homes. You can see here the forecast. 2002, they forecasted 5.5 for appreciation. It was 6. People were like, no, it's going to go down. It's going to go down. I'm going to wait to buy. So if you were one of those people in the beginning of 2002, you lost out on 6% appreciation, not to mention how much you paid on rent. 2003 forecast was 6.5. The actual was 7 overall. And then you can see the housing forecast moving forward still in 2024, which is a good appreciation amount. We want to keep it sustainable. We keep, if we get big numbers, then it's not going to be sustainable long term to keep appreciation. So we want that good appreciation number that we see there. Now, let's look at this here. And this is why I'm super passionate about real estate in general. So not just buying your first home, but also investing. Why it's such a big return on investment. Bought a home at $800,000, you put 5% down, $16,000, let's say, in closing costs. So you have $56,000 that you're leveraging. That's what you're putting in this investment. Well, depending on the appreciation, at a 5% appreciation on this home, that means in 1 year it went up $40,000. So $40,000 profit on that $56,000 investment is a 71% return on investment. There's no other investment ever that you can make a return on investment like you can in housing and real estate. Now let's talk about affordability, because that's going to be the next thing you say. Say, Kristin, I get it. I just, we can't afford it. Like housing prices have gone so much that the affordability is just not there. Sure, 3 years ago, it was different. Could have been able to afford that, but not today. Not as big of a gap as you think. And here's why. You got to think at all angles, right? So in 2021, let's say that you bought a home at $500,000, 2.875, your payment was $2,074. And you say that your monthly income was $8,000. Well, in 2004, based on a 6.625 rate, that home that's gone up, now you're looking at $3,585, right? So you say, okay, well, now that mortgage went up $1,500. Yeah, but your income went up as well. So with the cost of living, most people's income would have increased in that time frame 15%. So now your income is $9,200. So it did go up $1,510, which is a 70% increase on the monthly payment, but your income went up as well. So it's not as big of a gap as you look at, because a payment with a higher rate on the purchase price that went up $1,500 and income went up $1,200 a month, it's not that big of a gap. So it's really only $300 or $400 more a month that you would be paying, even though the price and the home prices and the interest rates went up. The gap is not as big as most people think it is, and it's going to continue to where your income is going to continue to increase to help support purchasing the home as well. So although your rent may be a little bit cheaper now and you may have to pay a little bit more on your mortgage payment depending on your situation, after the next couple of years as rent goes up, your housing would have stayed the same, and if interest rates come down, you're going to get even a better payment. Your affordability ends up being better. So yeah, initially you can see here your cash flow might be negative, meaning you're paying more for a home than you are rent. Eventually it softens out. This isn't even taken into account right here, the fact that mortgage interest rates are going to drop. You'll be able to get a lower interest rate in the future and better your terms in your payment. But you can just see here, this is renting versus owning. It's really important that you sit down and look at these different options so that you understand where you are and create a plan. The quicker you could purchase a home for most people, the more wealth that you're going to be able to obtain, and the more that you're going to be in a position to retire at an early enough age that you can go and enjoy and travel the world if that's important to you or your grandkids or whatever it is. But you can see your net gain of buying a home. Again, buying a home is one of the biggest return on investments that you can get. But you say, you know what, Kristin, I'm going to wait a year. What does that look like? Well, again, based on the data and statistics that we look at, if you were to buy a home at $600,000 today, or if you said, you know what, I thought I was going to buy a home, I'm going to wait a year, and let's say that the appreciation goes up. Well, you could see here, your appreciation for waiting a year, let's say it went up that 5%, you just lost out on $36,000 of appreciation and then paying down your loan balance, which is known as your amortization. And how much did you pay in that year for rent? If you pay $2,750 a month for rent, you just lost the $36,000, but you also didn't get any return on an extra $33,000 that you paid in rent. So you want to explore all those different options, because there are things that we can look at and say, okay, well, what if we buy today? What is that going to look like for my payment today? And then also consider, knowing the interest rates are going to go down, what is my payment going to look like in the future? So if the interest rates come down in the next couple of years, like most people predict in the DATS and the STATA, you could see that your payment would end up being lower. So buying today at the prices today, for most people, buying today, if you can afford it, and we have a lot of creative strategies to get you a lower payment initially that we could talk about. If we can get you into a home today and interest rates drop in the next couple of years and you get to take advantage of a lower interest rate, your payment affordability is going to be cheaper than if you were to wait to buy in the next year or two when rates drop, because now you paid more for the home. So it's really important to look at that. And the other thing that a lot of people don't realize is we're saving for the down payment. We want that 20%. Our parents told us that we need to avoid mortgage insurance, so we must have 20%. You're missing out on a lot of opportunity to gain wealth. Unless you're living with family and you're not paying any rent, then that's a completely different strategy that we could talk about, wealth building. But for the average person that's renting, use some of the money that you have saved. Maybe instead of putting 20% down, even if you have 20% down, we look at different wealth options to save you more money, whether it's consolidating debt within the purchase, paying things off, freeing up more income. I had a client, as you can see here, same thing. They had 20% down, but they had $1,200 a month in debts on their credit report. And I said, hey, let's shift it. Let's, instead of putting the 20% down, let's put 10% down, pay off those debts. It's going to free up $1,200 a month. And as you can see here, their payment went to $4,309 because they put less money down, but they saved $1,200 a month. So really, if they were going to pay $3,800 by paying the 20% down, that means that they're only paying $500 more a month to save $1,200 a month. So there's a lot of different strategies that we can look at to make sure that you're in the best financial position possible, to make sure that you're in a great position. And a lot of people are concerned right now because, yes, as there's more buyers in the market, that means that you're going to have less negotiations and you may have to pay more for the home than you wanted to. But knowing that homes appreciate, does it make sense to pay more for the home? Sometimes. Working with an experienced advisor is really important because we need to do the math to see, based on how long it's going to be, based on how much you're paying and how much it's going to appreciate, how long will it take for you to recover that cost? I do not think that it's a good idea for people to overpay on a home where you're going to be in what I call your own little housing bubble, meaning it's going to take you too long to recover how much you invested in paying over. So we do the math and we look and see, does it make sense for you to pay more for the home? Some cases it does because you're going to recover it in a couple minutes or a couple months, but sometimes it doesn't. And then I want to leave you with this. Warren Buffett, if you don't know who he is one of the wealthiest men alive. And this is what he says about homeownership. So let's listen to what he has to say.
Because they're one by one, they're not like apartment houses. So, but I would load up on them, and I would take mortgages out at very, very low rates. But if anybody is thinking about buying home, 5 years ago they couldn't buy them fast enough because they thought they were going to go up, and now they don't buy them because they think they're going to go down, and interest rates are far lower. It's a way, in effect, to short the dollar, because you can take a 30-year mortgage, and if it turns out your interest rate's too high next week, you refinance lower, and if it turns out it's too low, the other guy's stuck with it for 30 years. So it's a very attractive asset class now.
If you are a young individual investor at home and you have your choice between buying your first home or investing in stocks, where would you tell someone is the better bet?
If I thought I was going to live, if I knew where I was going to want to live the next 5 or 10 years, I would buy a home and I'd finance it with a 30-year mortgage, and it's a terrific deal. And if I was an investor that was a handy type, which I'm not, and I could buy a couple of them at distressed prices and find renters, I think that's, and again, take a 30-year mortgage. It's
So it's really, when you look at all the different information and data and stats, and you listen to what he has to say, it's pretty impactful for you to be able to see why so many people are investing in real estate. It's making sure you have the right information, the right data, the right stats, the right people in your corner to ensure that you're on the right path. And that's why, as you can see, and I mean, hopefully you got value bombs from this, right? Hopefully you're seeing the different statistics, data that go into this. I know it's kind of long, so great job sticking it through and empowering yourself to make educated decisions moving forward. If you're thinking about buying, know someone that's thinking about buying. Even if you think I'm still going to wait, call me. Let's jump on a free consultation. Let's get you on the right path and the right journey with the right people in your corner to give you educated information. My goal is not to say you should buy today. That is not the point of this today. The point of this today is to give you the data, the stats, and understand why, for a lot of people, it is a smart decision for you to buy a house today and not to wait. And there's nothing worse than my clients. I've been in the business, I'm top producer over 20 years, and nothing worse than clients waiting in a year and calling me back and saying, Kristin, you were right. I should have bought. For those a year ago are saying right now, I should have bought a year ago. And that's true. The sooner you buy, the more wealth that you're going to create for you and your family. We have great options and programs and information for you to help get your finances in order, get your credit in order, help you in a position to where you could start working on a plan to take control of your life, your future, your finances, and your retirement, and become a homeowner, build wealth. So reach out. Let's schedule a call today so that we can go over this information specifically for you.